Hello, yes, that's right, it's Joe here for Joyrider TV, coming this week from the Joyrider TV classroom. Oh yes, I've actually got a board. Yes, that's right, Marcus. This week the weather has been absolutely so that is why I've withdrawn to the classroom. Right, just going to make sure that it's working today. I did do some research before beginning the broadcast, but as always, yeah, that's all good. I'm just poking the screen a bit just to make sure. Okay, so just kicking off already, new feature that has been suggested, which I quite like, is there are a lot of people who don't get to tune in to the live Q&A at the time when it's live, and they might have a question that they'd like to ask, but they can't because they can't tune in live. Hi Stephen, nice to have you on board. Hi Dawson, welcome to the classroom. Hi Rodrigo, glad you could make it. So the person who sent me this idea, hi CNA, what, 5, is that 5 or 600? 600. Hi Pano, Yasure, hi Billy, Antonis, nice to see you. And to see you, nice, of course. Yeah, so I had a question from, it was actually Greg from Frankfort, Michigan, who is a Hobie 16 sailor, who, I'll just, hi, the Etoni. Hello, anyway. As you may have realised from previous videos, Show Us Your Cats, and live Q&As, I'm not very good at working out how to pronounce people's names. So apologies in advance if there is some sort of blunder in the in that department. But it was Greg, Frankfort, Michigan, who sails a Hobie 16. He offered up this idea of being able to submit questions for the Q&A ahead of time so that they could be answered in this session. And he said, I think this has been a burning question for a lot of people, but what is the significance at the end of every episode of Show Us Your Cat of the Joyrider Godzilla and the Joyrider Digger pictures? Well, it's a good question, I could tell you that. The first reason for the significance of those, firstly, is just to see if anybody was paying attention. So big 10 out of 10 there to Greg. But also these are some t-shirts that I've made in the past because I have got a small boy and he is one of the world's leading Godzilla historians. So I made him a Godzilla t-shirt, but on top of that, all young boys, young and old in fact, like diggers. So if you want a digger t-shirt, if you want to see what it's going to look like, just check out the end of Show Us Your Cat and I can knock one up for you. But as you may have seen on Sunday's Show Us Your Cat, if you are looking at doing some shopping, you're too late now for Christmas. You could roll the dice, hope for the best, but you're probably too late. Hello Quincy, nice to have you on board. Yeah, ready for today's session. Yeah, I'm just ready for some burning questions. If I'm trying to think what would be a good one to start off with, but let's talk about rudder rake. Should we talk about rudder rake just before any burning questions come in? Seeing as I've got a whiteboard and I need to warm up a little bit, I've got the pen. So rudder rake, what we're talking, right, this is the first picture, so it could be a little bit dicey. So let's, yeah, pretty dicey. There's the back of the boat. There's the rudder. I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's mix it up a little bit with some more. We could have the mast further back or further forwards. That's what we call the mast rake. Rudder rake would be if the rudder was further back or further forwards. Are we all still here? Yes, we are. Okay, so what happens is if the rudder is too far back, so if the rudder is allowed to go this way, then what's going to happen is it's going to make the steering incredible. If at any time when you're sailing your boat, if you feel that the steering is heavy, it means that weight is the rudder resisting against the water, which I think is generally what everybody on a boat is trying to do for some reason. Then having heavy steering is going to slow you down. So it is absolutely essential that the rudder is locked down to the back of the boat as much as possible. So it's as tight in as possible, because that is going to make the steering much lighter. Hello Robin, welcome to the classroom. Glad you could make it. We're just talking about a bit of rudder rake here. But on most boats, the furthest that the rudder can go forwards is actually the right position, the position where you want it. So with, of course, with different types of boat, there's different systems that do that. But I think, let's say, hello David, nice to have you on board. Welcome to the classroom. But I think at least which means you've got the same rudder system with the bolt on the top. And let's take a dive in to what, so this is still the front, so our rudder stock, looking at our rudder stock from this slot in the top of the rudder stock, and in this slot we have got a bolt. I'm sure everybody's loving the illustrations already. So we've got a bolt that goes down through the top of the rudder stock, and bearing in mind that this is the front of the boat, the further we put that bolt towards the front of the boat, that is going to be, if we think of it as pushing the top of the rudder blade backwards, the rudder blade is of course pivoting here, so we're pushing the top backwards, which is going to be pushing the front forwards, which is giving us our desired effect of having as little rudder rake as possible, which is going to make the steering much lighter. On the Hobie 16, it's not actually possible unless you file out the front of that slot. You should never have to file out the front of the slot. I'll come back to that in a second. But on a Hobie 16, if you've still got an original slot, putting that all the way to the front is the right position. On other types of Hobie, which have got the more modern rudder stock, let's illustrate the two types of Hobie rudder stock. So that would be like this. This would be very basically what a Hobie 16 rudder stock will look like, and then the rudder stock will be more like this shape. So this we could call a closed stock. This would be an open stock where you can actually see the rudder blade at the front. On any boats with this shaped stock, it is possible to adjust this bolt too far forwards. So you do need to be careful not to absolutely ram it forwards. Whereas with this sort of stock, which you'd get on a Hobie 16, a Hobie 14, or a Hobie Dragoon, I think that's all, forwards. But with this type of stock, which would be on your Hobie 18 Classic, your Hobie Tiger, your FX1, your Hobie 15, Pacific, anything else, then it is possible to put this bolt too far forwards, which, if that bolt, the rudder won't actually lock down correctly, which means it will come up very easily, which might lead you to believe that by adjusting the screw up there, so there's where the screwy bit would be in there. So you go up with, hold on, let's get in with, so you'd be going, so we'd be going up here with the screwdriver. So if this is too far forwards, you might feel that you need to tighten the screw more, but what you're actually doing is just compressing the spring until it's not a spring anymore, which isn't going to do you any favours. Instead, what you need to do is move this bolt back slightly, and then the cam in the rudder will be allowed to come down correctly, meaning that the rudder will lock down nicely. There we are. So I said with the 16 or 14 or similar, with this slot, if you feel that you've pushed your bolt all the way to the front of this slot and the rudder is still not locking down as much as you would like it to, then what that is something else is causing you problems there. Because on the 16, all you need to do is push that as far forwards as possible. So places where that problem may be coming from is the first thing to check, because it's the easiest to check, is your cam. I think we're all knowing what, do you think I could draw a cam from memory? Now that is a test. We've got a flat bit, a rounded bit, a nose, this is probably wrong, a little humpy bit, and then it comes round, and then there's a hole somewhere here. That is not to scale. But one thing that might be causing your rudder not to be locking down enough is that the hole in the cam has become so worn that the actual cam can move forwards and backwards a little bit. So before messing around with this, if it's all the way to the front and the rudder's not locking down enough, loosen the screw all the way off so that it's very loose. Try not to take it out because that is a pain. And then see what the movement on the cam is like. And if it looks like the cam, as well as flipping over, is able to move forwards and backwards, then it may be time to replace the cams. The cams, I think, are about $3 US each, maybe a little bit more, depends on where you get them from. But changing your cams, I would say if I had a boat and I was using it every weekend, I would change my cams once a year, just because you don't, you know, it's nice to have new things, and cams are a nice thing to replace. So let's replace the cams. Okay, I've had a question come in from David. I'll just finish this, David, then I'll come on to your tornado question there. So next place where the problem might be coming from is from the middle of the rudder blade where the bolt goes through. So if your cam seems to be fine, in fact, you could do this in either order, but if your cam seems to be fine, then remove the rudder blade, take the bolt, the two bolts out that hold the rudder blade in, and check that the hole where the bolt goes through the rudder blade, there isn't any movement there, because again, that movement between the bolt and the rudder blade, and there will be a metal or a plastic, what do they call it? A sheave? No. Bush? No. Yeah, like a bush. A metal bush or a plastic bush that goes through the rudder blade. If either that's moving inside the blade or if the bolt is moving inside that bush, then that's going to cause you that sort of problem as well. So this is just saying that this, if it's at the front, hi Matthew, nice to have you on board, then that is as far forwards as you go. You should never have to file out the front of that slot, in my opinion. Okay, so there we go. There's a little bit of rudder rake just to kick off. I think I know everybody's here mostly for rudders. If you're anything like me. All right, just scrolling back to see what David is saying about his tornado. I'm a beginner and I'm going to start sailing with a tornado. What do you recommend to me? Great idea. Yeah, so you may think, what? He's a beginner and he's going to start sailing with a tornado? Surely the tornado is the biggest and most powerful of the beach catamarans. Well, yes and yes. The tornado is the biggest and most powerful of most, let's say, normal beach catamarans. There are, of course, a few others that creep in there. But the reason why the tornado isn't a completely ridiculous choice to start catsailing on is because of the size. It means the boat being wider and longer means that it's more forgiving in forwards and backwards and side to side movements, because with the boat being so wide, when the hull lifts, it lifts a lot slower than, I think, at the other end of the scale. Let's say we've got a Hobie Bravo, which is probably about 1.5 meters wide. That's at the other end of the scale. Although that's sold as like a beginner's boat, you're much likely to capsize, more likely to capsize with a Bravo than you are with a tornado because of the width. The tornado being 3 meters wide gives you a lot of time to sort your life out before it starts getting a bit wet. So good choice with the tornado. What would I suggest as you get started? I would certainly suggest going out with winds below 10 knots to start with, definitely. And if you have the choice to keep sailing in wind below 10 knots until you really feel like you're getting a feel for it, that is definitely the right time to be going out. I had some conversation with an Australian chap with a Maori cat called Jason earlier on, and he said he'd been out on a day where it started off with the wind really, really light, gradually increasing throughout the day, and that is definitely the ideal conditions for both learning the technique and also for improving your confidence. Because if the wind's increasing as you're out, it means perhaps you go out and it's a bit slow. You're like, okay, when it's a bit slow and the wind is like, let's say, less than 5 knots, you have got a lot of time to make your adjustments, choose which direction you're going to sail in, that sort of thing. And then as the wind gets stronger, you have slightly less time, but it becomes a bit more fun. So having the wind gradually increasing as your confidence increases is absolutely perfect. So those are the conditions that you really want to be looking for. You want to make sure that where you're going sailing, I know not everybody has the choice, but try to have as much space as you possibly can when you're going out, especially the first times, because one of the most intimidating things with catamaran sailing is the apparent appearance that it's difficult to stop. So if you're in quite a crowded area, that could really throw your confidence. So I'm coming back to this confidence thing again. Confidence is such a delicate commodity. Once it's gone, it can be difficult to get it back. So really, really take care of your confidence so that you can end a session feeling, yes, that was a positive session, we're doing well there, and I want to do it again as much as I possibly can. So that is that would be whatever type of boat it is that you're learning to sail in. Start off with lighter winds if you can, and if the only opportunity you have to go sailing is perhaps at the weekend, and otherwise you have to wait for another week until you get your next chance, or perhaps there's only safety cover at the weekend, so that's your only choice, then just try to talk to as many experienced sailors as possible before going sailing, if you are going to go out when the wind's a little bit fruitier than your level would suggest that you should, and see what the other experienced sailors are. Strong wind isn't the worst. The worst for your confidence is gusty and shifty wind, where the wind is changing in direction and strength, because that is very difficult, and it doesn't really give you so many clues as to, is it you who made the mistake, or was it the wind changing that made the boat do something you didn't want it to do? Another thing which is worth doing early on in your cat sailing career is, in a controlled environment, if possible, go through a capsize drill, because one of the worst things that is going to happen most frequently is the capsize, especially if you're pushing it with a bit of wind. So if you get your capsize drill sorted early on, then it means that when you're out sailing, you're not going to be constantly in fear of the capsize. You'll know, if I capsize, I know what to do. It's not a problem. Like if you look at when kids go sailing on something like a topper, then if they're not racing, these kids will be capsizing once every 10 minutes or something. So they're going to be absolutely fearless on the water. I know in a catamaran it's more of a pain than in a topper, but if you apply the same sort of mentality, get your capsize drill sorted, and then your confidence will be much higher. Another thing you could do if you're going out sailing and the wind is a bit on the kind of should I, shouldn't I, leave the jib behind. The jib, on a tornado, the jib is pretty big, and also it means you've got two sails that can be, let's say, oversheeted in a gust, pulling you over, whereas if you've only got the main sheet, then you can really be focused on that, lot less chance of the swim, and a lot easier to tune. And also, if it is a little bit windier, having the jib up, the jib might be flapping a bit. That flapping can be quite noisy, and that noise can lead to, again, a slight dent in your confidence, because if it's really noisy, can be a bit intimidating, and it's also more difficult to communicate with your crew. So worth leaving the jib if it's a bit fruity, and that will help your confidence as well. But I think that about covers it. But I think the main point has been raised there, that your confidence is definitely the most important thing to look out for in the early sessions. Just that's quite a lot of talking. I'm just going to... oh yeah, that's the stuff. All right, so let's just have a look, see where we're up to. If somebody could let me know, by the way, if it seems like my microphone is working, or if you are getting these banging noises when I'm scrolling back, that'd be good to know, because I spent a while trying to get the microphone sorted before I started. All right, I've got Bilis Antonios. One question when you finish what you're saying. Okay, hello. The training 15er, call it 15 club. Okay, yeah, got you. Pardon. They have another system called Easylock that I use for teaching beginners in disaster. Any ideas for those? I take it disaster is the name of the place. To be honest, I haven't really, I've seen this Easylock system, but I haven't used it. Well, I haven't used it. I have seen it. And when we replaced our 15s the last time, we did have the banging noises. I heard, oh no, another fail. All right. Thanks for letting me know, Top Cat K2. Yeah, so the Easylock, it did look like a less sturdy system than the traditional rudder stock system. So when I replaced the 15s that we have here the last time, I had the choice, and I opted for sticking with the old school big chunky metal rudder stocks rather than changing for the new possibly lighter weight plastic rudder stocks, which I'm sure work very nicely, but I didn't want to, because we're out in Greece, where it does take a while to get hold of parts, I didn't want to be rolling the dice with something I wasn't familiar with, whereas I know the old style Hobie rudder stocks work very, very nicely, and there we go. All right, so why is this microphone not working? It worked the first time I tried, and then since then it has not. Let's see what that says. No. All right. Scrolling back. Very sorry about the banging noises. I've been trying to avoid this, but failing. Okay, Matthew. Hi. Howdy. Nice to have you on board. All right, Dawson. I've got a question. No, it's the cat channel. All right, here we go. Foiling dinghies like moths or wasps. I've noticed they often heel to leeward. Do you know why this is? Okay, firstly, what they do is they don't heel to leeward, they heel to windward. So if we were looking at one from behind, is that the sail there? Yeah, and the wind's coming from this way, the boat would be heeling that way, and going very nicely. What we found here with our foiling boats is if the boat has any heel on, so let's just have the wind coming from this way. So, yeah, I thought so, Dawson, nice one. If the boat is heeling that way, it will not foil. So it won't take off. All that will happen is you'll go fairly, you'll go nicely, but it won't come out of the water, because I assume, I'm not an expert in this hydrofoiling, hydrodynamics, but I'd assume that if your boat is sitting like that, there's the foil underneath with the flat bit. So as you get more pressure, that's taking weight off the foil, so it's not actually pushing it down, not creating any lift from the foil, so it's not actually going to pick up. Whereas if the boat is flat, then it's going to pick you up. But if the boat is heeled to windward, then that's actually going to put a bit of extra pressure on the foil, which means if the foil is like the aircraft's wing, it's going to be pushing down more on that, which is going to be picking us up more. That is why the foiling boats are heeling to windward. And what we found is if you can heel the boat to windward, then it is possible to foil upwind. Whereas if the boat is flat, or no problem, Dawson, if the boat is flat, or definitely if it's heeled to leeward, then the boat is going to just drop off the foils. Oh, here we go. Could it be, this is just an extension from Top Cat K2, could it be that foiling is only possible in half wind or backwind? So backwind, what we call downwind. It is, well, depends on the type of boat that you're sailing, actually, because if you watch the moths racing, and I dare say this is the same for wasps, is the boats do foil upwind. They go incredibly fast upwind, and the really good guys can actually tack, keeping the boat up on the foils. So you can foil on any point of sail, but it does depend on the type of boat that you're sailing. But the efficient foilers, which are designed for foiling, can certainly, the AC75 can also, looking forward to that America's Cup, that's for sure. Oh my goodness. All right, scrolling back. Sorry about the banging noises. All right, hi Jason. Jason does not want to feel the fear. Very good. And we already know that this is the Jason I was talking about earlier with the married cat in Australia. He, early on in his career with his married cat, he's capsized. So now he doesn't have any problem with capsizing or any psychological problems with capsizing. So he's happy to go out there and send it, to give it some beans, because he knows if it capsizes, it's not going to be a problem. So if you are a catamaran sailor and you haven't yet capsized on your catamaran, perhaps that's something to put on your list of things to do. Perhaps once the temperature picks up, in a controlled environment. If you watch any of my capsizing videos, they show the safest, easiest way to capsize the boat deliberately. And if you're going to do it for the first time, do make sure that you have got some sort of assistance on hand, or you're doing it in water which isn't too deep, so you can stand if necessary, or with the wind onshore, so if it ends up where you find for some reason you can't bring the boat back upright, you're going to get blown back to shore, so it's not going to be a disaster. But I would say if you haven't capsized, then there is a bit of an unknown with one element of your sailing. Okay. All right, Billis was good. Okay, so we are united in being in Greece and it taking a while to get hold of spare parts. But if there is anything you need, then do let me know, because I have got some spare parts here, not for this Easylock rudder system, but many things. You could send me an email and I'll like 30 years worth of spare parts, both new and used, would you believe? Just banging on the screen, sorry. All right. All right, we've got Tom on board. My joyridertv is sealed. Now, this is a tricky one because I'm just trying to think what you would do to see if it's sealed. The way that we, at Wildwind, the way that we will usually find if a mast isn't sealed, if the boat has been inverted, and then later on, perhaps when we take the mast down on the boat, you can hear water inside the mast. Or if the boat's inverted and it is very, very difficult to get back upright from being completely inverted, then that is a really strong sign that there's water in the mast. But how would you actually test it? The only way that I could think of testing it would be, in most masts, towards the bottom, there is some, I think you'd call them sacrificial rivets. In most masts, either at the bottom or the top, a rivet that you can just drill out that doesn't actually hold in any fittings. So this is somewhere towards the bottom of the mast, if possible. Put the boat on its side or drop the mast, and then all of the fittings, get some like washing up soap in water and rub the washing up soap all over the fittings, all the way up the mast, and then take some sort of pump, like a bike pump would do on the beach. If you're a kite surfer, a kite pump, or if you're a stand-up paddleboarder and you've got a pump, any type of pump, and then you'll need to make some sort of custom fitting for your pump. Now, what you can use, hold on, I'll be back in a second. Worth waiting for, this is solid gold, is in your pump, if it's like a bike pump or anything, you can take apart a biro, make sure there's not, tape up the little hole in the biro, and then take the actual pen out of the plastic outer of the biro, and then you can slot your biro into the pump like a what's it called, a Schrader valve pump, like the car tyre size pump. You can put your biro in there, and then of course you've got a thin end, then that thin end will fit in to the hole where you've just taken the rivet out. And then, this is going to sound strange, but then pump up the mast. So you're filling the mast with air, and it's going to fill up a lot quicker than you'd think. And when you start feeling resistance on the pump, that's when you're compressing the air. Of course, if you've got a compressor, you could do this very quickly. And then look at the fittings where you've put the soap, and if you see bubbles appearing on any of the fittings, that means that is where the mast is leaking. So you then need to seal the mast up, which if you don't want to have to take the fittings off, you could possibly seal it with some Sikaflex or some sealant on the outside, but the best way is to take the fitting off, clean it up, get some new rivets, well, you'll need to because you've just drilled them out, put some sealant underneath, fill the holes, and then put the fitting back on. And if there is some good method of sealing the rivets, then you want to do that, put it back on, then test the pressure again, and then hopefully you'll be all right. Okay, there you go. That is what I would do for sealing a mast. But what we've done with what we've actually done with our Hobie 14 here is the mast has got quite a lot of holes in that would be way too much to fix them all. So just the quick fix for that boat was to put a masthead float on it. That means that the mast can never go in the water, which means that the holes in the mast are no longer a problem. It's not ideal because sometimes it is nice to be able to invert the boat, like if it's really windy and the boat's going very fast on its side. But if you've got a lot of holes in your mast, consider a masthead float and that could do well. Okay, scrolling back, watch your ears. Okay. Oh, there we go. Jason has said there, plus masthead float. There we go. Tyler, hello, good morning. I'm a bit late tuning in today, but hopefully hoping to learn as always. Yeah, I hope so. We're in the classroom today, Tyler. We've been looking at some rudder rake kind of stuff. You'll have to watch again later to see what I was talking about there. Hi Pierre from Quebec City, Canada. Nice to have you on board. Hope it's not too cold. Hi Keith in Okinawa, Japan. Nice to have someone in Japan with us. This is good. We're really spreading our wings. Here we go. In need of a longer batten for a newer 6 batten Hobie 14 sail. It seems the sails are cut differently than the old 5 batten sail. Yeah, that in fact I did find this when I was doing some t-shirt designs for the Hobie 14s, that in the older boats the mainsail is I think the older boats, the sails seem to be a bit wider, more like a 16, whereas the newer boats, the sails seem to be a bit kind of more high aspect, a bit more modern. But yes, when you change the vintage of your sail, and this is the same for a lot of different types of boat, unfortunately, the battens aren't going to match up perfectly. So if it turns out that all of your battens are too short, then the only solution there is to move all of your battens up one, and then you'll have to get a new bottom batten, because generally the bottom batten is the longest. move them all up one, get your hacksaw out, measure twice, cut once, and then that means you will have to source another batten. Yeah, so yeah, I would say that is about the size of it. If you are cutting the battens down, then do make sure that after you've cut your batten, you take some sandpaper or a file and really take the edges off where you've cut it, because that fiberglass, when you've cut it, can be quite sharp. And I know it's not going to happen on a 14, but if you're sailing a boat which has got a spinnaker and you make a mess of your spinnaker drop or hoist and it flies around the back of the mainsail, the battens could rip the spinnaker, or other things could happen. So do take the edges off, maybe even put a bit of tape on there as well. But there we go. All right, scrolling back. Oh, Keith, extended. I'm looking at extending a batten about 10 centimetres. Any suggestions on how to do this? Ultimately, I'll look out for some other battens, but here, Hobie, oh, rarer than hen's teeth. That's pretty rare. Yeah, when before I worked out here in Greece, I had a Dart 18, which the Dart 18 is notorious for snapping battens. And I used to extend my own battens or repair them by basically taking another piece of batten and just taping it to the batten with electrical tape. The thing that makes it work is if you make sure that where you're taping it together, you have quite a good length section of overlap. So I would say for a batten on a 14, you want to be looking at least 30 centimetres of overlap, and then really put on a lot of tape around that join to make sure that it's not going to slip. And then do keep an eye on that batten pocket in the sail. And if you see you're getting some vertical creases along that batten pocket, try tightening the batten up a bit more, and actually be that your join is slipping a bit. What you could also do that would make it more secure is if you drilled some very small holes through both of the battens, and then take some very thin line, like a 1.5 millimeter line, and then kind of like, what would you call it, like weave the line through this join, going through the two battens, then that should stop any forwards, backwards, any of this, where, because that's pushing, so it could slip. Whereas if you've got it weaved or woven, then it won't slip. Good idea, I think. That is what I do. But of course it's not ideal, and you will have a bit of a flat spot. So a batten is usually like a constant curve if it's not tapered, but there where you've got this flat spot, it's going to be a lot stiffer there. So then in the sail it would go down. Oh, let's draw it. We've got this facility. Where's this bit? Okay. So it'd be like curve, this is exaggerated, flat spot, curve, where you've got that batten there. There we are. That is what I would say. All right. I have noticed the Q&A sessions aren't quite as fierce as they were back in August, let's say. So do keep the questions coming, even though we've gone beyond the 45-minute mark. Hello, Rob. Nice to have you on board. Hello, Ewan. I'll be at online college next week, so I'll miss the live stream. So I won't miss the live stream by being on the bus. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, so you'll actually be able to be watching the live stream in the comfort of somewhere comfortable. Nice. Hi, Aidan. Bit off topic. Looking to buy a cat to learn him without investing too much. This is not off topic. This is on topic. Okay, Aidan is asking, all right, let's just read that again to make sure I'm right. Without investing too much, what would you suggest to get? Yeah, okay. So if you look at, there are so many choices. Depends a bit on which country you're in, because there are some boats which are only available in certain countries. Like in Australia, I've just been learning about the Maricat and the Calypso 14. Either of those would be a really good, perhaps not so expensive and quite a forgiving boat to learn to sail on. But if you've got the choice, then the two sort of design, what would you call it, points that you will be looking for in the boat is, firstly, if it's a boat that doesn't have a boom, then this is more likely to be a boat which is designed for entry-level sailing or for easier, more practical sailing. Oh, Windrush 14 in Australia, cheap as chips. Wow. Yeah, so if it hasn't got a boom, it's going to be more entry-level or designed for more for easier sailing and definitely less powerful, which does lend itself to being better at the earlier stages of the game. The other design point that you want to be looking for with your first boat is not to have any sort of centerboard or daggerboard. In fact, I think at the moment, this is the last question that we've got. So let's just take a look at hull shape, because this is a very good topic. Just bear with me as I remove my rudders. I know everyone was enjoying that, but at some point they've got to go. All right. I hope everyone's enjoying it in the classroom today. Change of scenery. All right. So, and then the other thing you could look at is, before we go into the hull shape, is what the construction is of the hulls. Generally, a fiberglass boat is going to be not quite as durable as a boat made out of this. There are what I call plastic boats. I know it's a bit unfair on the plastic boats, but the plastic boats are pretty indestructible. So if you're in the UK, a really good choice would be the Dart 16 or the Topaz 14, I think, which is another plastic boat without a boom, or any plastic boat without a boom if you really want to have a boat which is specific to that level of the game. But having said that, there's nothing to say that you need to have a specific type of boat for starting off your sailing. I may have said this before, but the Hobie 16, as long as you don't try to go out and sail in too much wind too soon, you can learn to sail on a Hobie 16. And because the Hobie 16 requires good technique, it means you'll be learning that good technique from the start, rather than being able to get away with a bit of shonkiness here and there. So there's nothing to say that the Hobie 16 is the wrong choice. And the thing is, with a boat like a Hobie 16, or if you're in America, maybe a Prindle 15 or 16, which does a similar job to the Hobie 16, these boats might keep you interested for a lot longer than some of the more specific beginner boats, because as you get more wind, they do really hammer, if I may. Okay, so let's take a look at the three different main types of hull shape on catamarans. Ding. All right, so the first one . Okay, and there's the top. Let's put the top on. We're putting the top on. This is what we would call an asymmetric hull shape. So the flat side of the hull, this is looking from behind or in front. So the flat side of the hull will always be on the outside, and because what a hull shape needs is something to stop the boat from slipping sideways. Where can I do this? Over here? All right, so there's our boat. As we're sailing along, all of the pressure is trying to make the boat kind of slip this way. So that's why we have a flat side. So that flat side sits in the water and resists against that pressure. And by having that resistance, it kind of squeezes between that resistance and the wind, which is what makes the boat go forwards in a kind of in the water, kind of in a hydrodynamic way. We've obviously got sails as well, which are doing a similar job, but the shape of the hulls, that flat side, is going to be pushing the boat forwards and directing the boat, which is why we need that flat side. So there's our Hobie 16, Prindle 15, 16, 18, Hobie 14. There are obviously many others. Hobie 13. Very nice. Okay, so the second type of hull shape you should be looking at, actually, this asymmetric hull shape, the downside of the asymmetric hull shape is they are more difficult to sail with, because on an asymmetric hull shape, we'll draw it in here. So this is looking from the side. There isn't any single pivot point on that hull shape. So it's a very broad, well, there isn't a pivot point. Also, it puts more load on the rudder, having that hull shape. So it's not as efficient and easy to use as the more modern shapes. The more modern shape that we want to be looking at here this is meant to be symmetrical, by the way. It's a little bit off. Agreed. Oh, I'm just making it worse. Okay, but all right. One more try. All right, let's get rid of him. Okay, this is what we'd call a symmetrical hull, where it is, if we were to cut it in half, both sides would be like a mirror image of each other. And these symmetrical hulls have what we would call a skeg. Let's draw the side on view. So this would be something. This is quite exaggerated, but the hull would come back to a point here in the water, which we'd call a skeg. Perhaps that would be slightly more along there. But we'd find this on the Dart 16, the RS 16, the Topaz 14, the Hobie 15, the Hobie Dragoon, the Hobie Catsailing, Twixie, or even Teddy. Perhaps on the Hobie Getaway. Yeah, so this is very much the best hull shape to go for at the start of your sailing career if you are looking for a boat which is going to be as easy as possible, this asymmetric hull shape. This you'll also find on the Dart 15, the Dart 18 as well, and on various other boats. Sorry, I don't mention Nacras very much. It's just because I don't really know as much about those boats as the others. I'd have to look at the brochure to get more information. But this asymmetric, this symmetrical hull shape with a skeg is definitely the shape that you would want to go for. The other hull shape, what colour are we now? Let's go green. Is again, it's symmetrical, But here we can see it's quite rounded, and what we have, so that rounded hull isn't going to give us that leeway prevention. So what we have here is an additional part, which is a centerboard or a daggerboard, which sticks into the water. Let's draw, that green isn't coming through quite so much. Let's draw it on here. Okay, so for our leeway prevention, we've got the daggerboard there, but with daggerboards or centerboards, they do require adjustment, which gives you something else to think about, and they are quite a fragile part of the boat, so if you hit the bottom with it, you could cause some damage quite easily, whereas with these two, they are designed for being able to drag up the beach, usually quite strong. These skeg hulls, apart from on the Dart 18 and 15, most other skeg hull boats, the skegs are nearly indestructible, so you can drag them up the beach as many times as you want and they'll generally be fine. The asymmetric hull's also very durable for going up and down the beach. And also on the asymmetric hulls, what people do quite a lot is put like a sacrificial strip of fiberglass on the keel line to make the boat more durable, so that they're not actually going to wear through the original hull, because it will wear, everything wears, but the daggerboard is generally on the more high performance boats, so you'd have or let's just draw a centerboard as well in blue. See if we could do a better hull shape here. No, we can't. So a centerboard would be more like this kind of shape. And the difference between a centerboard and a daggerboard is the centerboard is on a pivot. So inside the hull, there'd be a pivot there. And when it goes up like this, and it goes inside the hull. So a centerboard is easier to deal with than a daggerboard, because the daggerboard, when it goes up, it goes straight up this way. So when it's up, you're left with the daggerboard sticking out from the top of the hull, which does make it a bit more difficult to deal with than the centerboard. So the centerboard would be on a Tornado, on a Prindle 19, perhaps even a Prindle 18-2, maybe a Hurricane 5.9, maybe a Shearwater. Oh, I don't know. That could be the daggerboard. On the daggerboard, that would be on an F18. Pardon, on an F18, on an A-class, or anything similar. So there we go. All right, so I think that's a very detailed explanation to what would be a good first boat. So, where to buy from? I would be looking in all of the classifieds. If you're on Facebook, most areas will have, or most countries would have a group on Facebook, which is like catamarans for sale / wanted, catamaran parts for sale, something like that. So get involved in those groups on Facebook. It would be a good reason to start being on Facebook if you weren't on Facebook already, because those groups have got really strong communities of people who are trying to help each other. And a lot of people who are in these communities seem to have a little bit of time on their hands, and they might be looking at the classifieds, even if they're not looking to buy a boat. And if they see a good one, they might post it within the group. And you could also, with one of those groups, say, I'm looking for a boat that's suitable for someone starting out, which would be very good. Yeah, cheers, Aidan. It's a pleasure. Also, eBay. Never underestimate the power of eBay. There's a lot of stuff on eBay if you have a bit of a poke about there. But there we go. I think that is about the size of it, 62 minutes, and that will do. So before you log off, if you could just hit the like button, that will help for other people to get to see this video later on. These videos do get saved and are available to view later. Cheers, Dawson, it's been a pleasure. As I said at the start, you may have missed it. If you are unable to make a future Q&A session, but you've got a question that you'd like to be answered, then email it to me. Put the, the subject of the email as just Q&A, and then I will know that that question is for a Q&A session, and I will address it in a future session like this. Hi, Rob. Oh, nice to see you there, Rob. Oh, I didn't know you were hiding there at the back. Hi, Donovan. Have a good day to you as well. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and I'll be back next week with some more. So do come armed with some challenging questions, and hopefully the weather will be a bit nicer, and maybe I could be outdoors again, although this has been quite useful, I think, with these excellent pictures. Okay, so thank you very much. Just stay safe out there. If you are able to get out on the water, you have got 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks left to get on the speed stick before it gets reset on New Year's Day, when we're going to see a Laser 5000 up there in first for at least a week. That's what I'm expecting. Thank you very much, and goodbye.